Welcome everybody to Pitch Night here at ArtU for the School of Game Development. So tonight we're going to be listening to 5 student teams pitch their game ideas for collaborative products for spring 2018. This is that one opportunity as a game developer, very early on in your career, that you get to make your game. While we love what we do here in game development, a lot of times, admittedly so, we work on products that we have to do. And we still love it. We're still proud of everything we do. But this is your time to make your project, to make your game. And yes, we absolutely intend to get these out there. These are to be launched, okay? Now in this, you're going to have the full support of staff at ArtU, from students, from staff to mentor you and guide you in this journey as it may be. Okay? So tonight, as you guys are pitching, already talked about what you need to get done. We have brought in people that actually are active in the game development community. So if you guys could please introduce yourselves.
I'm Alex Vaughn. Hey everyone. Yeah. Hey, what's up? Yep. I'm currently working at EA Maxis Studio on The Sims. Been there for a few years now. Before that, all sorts of other businesses and studios.
Hi, I'm Joe Quadera. I'm formerly of 2K Games and Big Huge Games and Crystal Dynamics. I specialize in gameplay and combat, and now I'm a freelancer helping out all sorts of secret projects I can't tell you about.
Hi, my name is Eli Robles. I'm an environment artist. Hey. In the industry since 2002. Been lucky enough to work on titles from Sony, Crystal Dynamics, LucasArts. So can't wait to see what you guys got.
Hi everybody, I'm Steve Kuroki, currently creative director at Enway Studios. Been working in the games industry for 17 years or so. Met some of these guys along the way. We do everything from art direction to game design. Our current game, Power Rangers Legacy Wars, is out on mobile, focusing on a synchronous PvP mobile game.
Nice. Thank you very much. So Scott, Celine, is there anything else we need to address before we hear from our students? So part of the entire process is that as students, you will get to vote on these presentations. Please make sure you go to the link here or scan the code as necessary. This will be open, or all surveys are going to be open for the last 30 minutes after the final pitch. Make sure your voice is heard, because we will take that in consideration as we go to approve these, okay? Just like any other process, when you go to have your project greenlit, you have to be approved. So as students, make sure, again, vote for your presentations, vote for your friends, or vote for the product that you think is going to be the coolest thing that gets out there. Again, just make sure that your voice is heard. Anything else? All right, so let's get to this. Let's see what our students have this evening. So we're going to be starting with Porf Royale, and Andrew Langwasser will be speaking about that tonight. So Andrew, do we have a microphone for Andrew? Please make sure you speak into the mic, okay? Whenever you're ready, your time will start.
Hi, I'm Andrew Langwasser, and I am presenting Porf Royale. Porf Royale is a 3D fighting game that brings gamers the experience they never knew they wanted. With an arena falling out from underneath their feet, players must use their Porf and a power of their choice to send their opponent to their death in the blender below. A super genius known only as the Professor has been trying to clone himself for years. No matter what he does, he is only able to clone these horrible abominations known as porfs. Unable to deal with the growing mass of clones, the genius creates a fun way for him to dispose of his clones. He gives them superpowers, and he makes them fight to their death above a blender. What couldn't be fun about that, right? So in our current gameplay prototype, we have a versus multiplayer game mode. It's currently a 1v1 combat. One multiplayer arena featuring 37 individually falling tiles. These tiles do fall at random every 5 seconds. There is a chance for two tiles to fall at a time. And there is a high angle isometric camera view of the arena. This screenshot here is not the in-gameplay screenshot. This is just a whole view of the blender. Okay, so each player controls a porf via the analog stick. Controllers are required, obviously. Powers are used by controlling the face buttons on the controller. Porfs do not have any health. The goal here is to knock the player into the blender using your powers, so you don't want to be focusing on trying to knock their HP all the way down. Right now in the current playable prototype, there are 2 powers, the fireball and the headbutt. The fireball places down a fireball, obviously a mine that knocks back anyone who touches it. Headbutt is a 2-second charge up attack that sends the porf flying forward and does a knockback on whatever they hit. And here's the concept art for the porf character. He's very cute, obviously, very likable guy. This is the final 3D model, and then on the right is the concept art. And now let's get into the gameplay video. So a couple things I want to preface before I start the gameplay video. That we didn't have an animator with us on the prototype team. So there is a lack of animation. So when you see the porf sliding across the screen, that is him doing the headbutt. I also wanted to note that player 1 chose the headbutt and player 2 chose the fireballs. This is the power select screen. It's pretty basic. I just skipped through that real quick since it's a pretty quick mock-up.
3, 2, 1, 5.
The arena edges knock back the player porf, so you see that when they're hitting the edge there, they're getting knocked towards the center. So you kind of couldn't see it there, but player 1 did use their headbutt and knocked player 2 back into the blender there. Oh, jeez. It's not going to go past that. That's embarrassing. So, you've seen what we have in our prototype. Now going forward into our proposed content, we want to implement a pacifist mode with no powers, a new single player mode with AI. That'll probably take us the longest. And then potentially a 2 versus 2 team porf match. New animations, models, and rigs will obviously be made for the new prototype. We want to do new maps, an underground lab, and a porf stadium, because wouldn't it be cool just to fight in front of a bunch of the clones? And we want to add more abilities. That's one of the harder things that we think will be is balancing and implementing those abilities. So we want to do 2 at a time, just for time's sake. We want to do ragdoll physics as well for all the porfs. That would be one of our bigger projects. All new UI and UX, enemy AI, like I said before, and animations for seeing the porfs being blended. One of the big things we wanted in the prototype was to actually see the porf fall in and get blended up in the blender, but due to animations, we didn't have time for that. So target devices, Windows, PC, and Unity. And that's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Great presentation. Judges, do you have any immediate questions for him? Can you please speak into the mic? Thank you.
In terms of environment, what type of strategies can the players use, or is it just totally random, like tiles falling?
It is totally random files.
Okay.
Tiles falling, so you won't be able to know which tile is going to fall.
Mm.
We would like to have some sort of warning beforehand.
Okay.
So maybe
like a tell.
flash, yeah, like a flashing or a tell.
Okay. Will it be environment hazards that they'll have to avoid and whatnot?
No, not right now. So the only environment hazard right now is the falling tiles.
Mm. Okay.
Oh, and the edges will knock players back. So I guess
Oh,
you
okay.
could consider that a hazard.
Okay.
How long did you put into this current demo?
About 2 months.
2 months. And then how much playtesting did you do in that 2 months?
We had about 2 or 3 weeks of playtesting after we got all of our main mechanics scripted.
And that was the team that was building it?
Yeah.
Did you pull anybody from the outside?
No, we didn't have much outside testing.
Okay.
So that's something that we would like to have because, it's a fighting game.
Right.
We need a lot of outside input.
Right.
I was gonna say the one thing that kind of seemed a little off to me at the very beginning is the first few seconds you're actually playing. There's no tiles falling, no hazards, no real immediate danger it seems, and without any real HP or any other sudden death sort of circumstance. What do you think the player is going to do for the first few seconds while they're kind of waiting for the level itself to start to deteriorate?
So I think the players will, depending on what power they choose, if the fireball, they choose the fireball, they'll probably want to set up themselves in a better way. So I saw some people using the fireball in a way to section off an area of the map and keep themselves safe. So maybe people will use that time to kind of set off themselves an area.
Yeah, so to create a defense. Of
Yeah,
some sort?
create a defense.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, one thing we would want to do to maybe create that sense of urgency in the start is to let the players know those tiles are going to fall, and probably show them the blender below to create that urgency.
Okay. Now, also, I guess the next follow-up question to that is, can the player manipulate the tiles themselves?
No.
No.
No, they have no control over the
No
tiles.
control. And what was your thought on just a random tile drop versus scripting the tiles to drop in a certain order?
So a random tile drop would be, I think, jarring to the player maybe because we develop a sense of consistency with every 5 seconds a tile is dropping. So
Right. But it's a random tile, though.
Yes, it is a
Yeah.
random tile.
Yeah.
So we would like to set up a tell before that.
Well, not only that, but as far as most games that I've played over the years that kind of have the sort of theme of dropping out or anything like that, is that they are scripted, and after a while you can learn the patterns of the dropping, whether or not it's the same one every single time or a dozen different kinds of patterns.
Right.
But part of the charm is that you learn those patterns and you kind of can play the game a little bit more strategically.
Yeah.
As opposed to just randomly dropping out and falling under you and you really not feeling like you're in control.
Okay, so yeah, maybe one thing that we should consider doing is setting up a tile presets so that there are preset patterns into which the tiles fall.
Absolutely, I thought.
Yeah.
So it's a Port Royale. So Royale would suggest it be a bunch of different classes or different play styles. Early on, when you're coming up with the pitch, we talk about it being a fighting game, and then you kind of go into the story, and then you mention a single player. But it would probably be good if you were maybe to elaborate a little bit more about what you're thinking in terms of the different types of characters, how they change styles, why players would want to pick one versus the other, and how it varies the combat. Maybe.
Okay, so my initial idea with the characters was that they would all be kind of aesthetically different, but they would all be controlled the same way, and that the variance in playstyles would come from the powers that they selected. So very obviously you can see the two different kind of playstyles that you get with the mine and the headbutt. So we kind of want to create that more sense of playstyles, I guess, going forward. So we would have a more interesting set of abilities.
Were you thinking about maybe building in progression for each class, maybe? Like they unlock different abilities? Or
Yeah,
would
so
you-
there, you would only start off with 2 abilities, and then you would unlock abilities going forward. So you would earn a currency, and then you would essentially buy loot boxes almost, and you would get new powers and new Porf variations.
And you mentioned, I think there was a little line there on monetization. Like, what is your, like, what is
Yeah,
that?
so I talked about it just now, but I want to do loot boxes because we could really do a lot of variations with the like the character style. So there's a lot of different options as far as how he looks, the color, all that different stuff, and then we can also add in power sprite variations. So we could do just stuff to make the player feel like they're different and cooler, but anything really mechanically different.
Okay, do we have any questions from the audience here in the room for Andrew? Right over here? Okay.
Andrew, thanks for presenting. First of all, what is Porf?
Porf is just a failed clone. He's
So
just
PORF isn't like an acronym for something?
nope. He is just Porf.
Yeah. Okay. Second question was, sorry. Second question is, what is the scale of the characters in the world? It looked like, are they tiny people fighting over a real-size blender, or what's the?
Yes, so they are miniaturized in this map. So the scale for the Porfs will be different based on what map they're on.
Okay.
In this map, they are tiny fighting on top of a blender.
Okay, but that's not consistent. It just be whatever the map is.
Yes,
The,
yeah,
okay.
it'll be based on the map.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the style of fighting games, Brawl, or Super Smash Brothers rather, is one of the biggest in the sort of genre. Will there be a similar mechanic to, are you familiar with Ganon Size, where Ganondorf grabs an enemy and they both die, but since Ganondorf initiated the kill, it counts as a win?
So are you saying like a grapple,
Basically a
attack?
grapple, and if both Porfs fall down, will the attacker like count that as a death, or
Yeah,
will
so grabbing was one of the powers that I wanted to use. So I wanted to have one of the powers grab a Porf and actually physically throw him. But due to scope and time for the prototype, we just didn't have the ability to implement that.
Okay, Celine, do we have any questions online? We have time for one, unfortunately.
Oh, God. Give me a second then.
Okay.
Okay.
Andrew's such a compelling person, such a fantastic product that everyone wants to know what's up.
Oh, okay. Out of all the questions, this one seemed interesting to me. Will there be a mech to grab onto the edge of the tiles to save yourself?
So like a mechanic to save yourself?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's actually a really good idea and something I would like to implement.
I will say there were like 4 other questions, just to let everyone know I am reading them, but chose that one for now.
Okay.
Links online.
So judges, do you have any general feedback for Andrew for his product, his presentation, anything he should know as a potential developer? Or do you guys have it all covered with what you've already said?
I think the question's kind of aimed to where we like to see things, but overall, I think it's fun. It's kind of whimsical and clearly gory, and I like that right off the start you said something about it's the game we never knew we wanted to play, and I always look for what's the expectation, what's the fantasy, and you basically just said you didn't know you had this fantasy of fighting and killing somebody over a blender,
And it's fun. No, you never knew it'd be so much fun to make a Porf smoothie.
Right, exactly. so I think selling that smoothie aspect, I think, will be really cool. Of putting all time into effects and animation. I think for me, I want to see things that you don't have the resources currently, like animation-based, like tells to the movement, defense abilities. But the thing I would really actively encourage you to do is get outside people to play the game, because they're going to give you the fastest feedback of what you need to get to people having fun.
Exactly.
In that space.
I know how hard it is to do the pitch, so I think you did a really good job. I would say, be confident about how you're presenting. Maybe don't make so many excuses about like not having the resources, because everyone knows it's really hard to have the resources there. I would spend a little bit more time on developing the higher concept, for a fighting game, like focus a little bit more on at least 4 or 5 different classes and show examples of the abilities and how they might interact with each other. What we asked about, like the progression, is pretty important, especially if you're talking about loot boxes and monetization, because that's what people with money want to hear about. But yeah, overall, thanks for sharing. It's pretty fun.
Thank you. I think it'd be worthwhile to kind of show the blend, just to show people like, hey, this is what you're in for.
Yeah.
Get that splash moment of like, all this is, for this blend.
Exactly.
I want to see this guy like rolled up in his
Yeah, I was actually going to reiterate that pretty much. Is that I think it's a fun concept. It's very out there and unexpected, and I think you should go lean into it and just make sure that the context is really strong and that it's absurd. Make it that these smoothies that you're making, you're actually selling or something like that, and they have to be only the winner can survive, and it's a loser smoothie that you're making, and that's what you're selling. And then there's some sort of victory from that. Just really lean into it and take it to the extreme. Because right now, what Goody was saying is that it just seems a little too bizarre that you have these little clones that are on a blender with maybe ice cubes that are dropping into there and that sort of thing. So if that's what it is, play that up, get the context in there, and just really go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much to our judges. And Andrew, you are done. Great job. I got it. Okay, so next up we have Blast Vault with Matt Washington. If you would, sir. Oh, Matt, actually, let's switch mics.
Thank you.
Your time will start whenever you are ready. Oops. There we go.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Washington. I'm going to be presenting to you my pitch for Blast Vault. It is a 3D side-scrolling shooter that promotes quick and precise aerial shooting to keep the player airborne while avoiding hazards and enemies, what have you. Every time you perform an aerial shot, your aerial gauge is depleted. In order to regenerate it, you need to hit an enemy with an aerial shot and kill them. That will allow you to perform another aerial shot, and every aerial shot will propel your character in a different direction depending on the weapon type they chose to use. So it's going to have a very colorful, futuristic theme. It's going to have twitch-based game mechanics and varied gameplay. So there will be sections where you're running around and shooting, much like in a game like Gunstar Heroes, and there'll be sections where you are trying to get to point A to point B by the aerial shot mechanic. So it's going to be on PC. Ideally, we release it on something like Steam, Greenlight, or itch.io. Keyboard and controller support, and the audience we're trying to reach are people who are fans of a run and gun type of game, whether they be casual or hardcore. This is a rough demonstration of blast vaulting in action. That capsule character you see there has sort of a shotgun, and he is being propelled in the opposite direction he shoots. Now, the aerial gauge is not implemented at this point. So let's move on to inspirations for this game. Mega Man, of course, is one. It mixes more basic forward shooting with platforming. And then we have Gunstar Heroes, which is way more frantic. You have a lot more enemies on the screen. And I want to combine these two to have really frantic run and gun portions and then really frantic platforming portions. And then a game called Downwell is pretty much the inspiration for the Blast Vault mechanic. I saw this game and I wanted to expand upon this shooting aspect it's got. So in terms of the art direction, a game called Gotcha Force is pretty much what I'm trying to get at. It's got a very colorful theme. All the characters kind of look like little robot toys, and they have that toy-like stylized charm to them. And then for the environment, we will go back to another Mega Man game. I do want to have a futuristic theme for the environment, just as colorful as the characters, with a mix of organic and geometric shapes to look interesting. So in terms of the game plan, by the midterm, I would like to have an alpha. And to me, that's more of a functional build. Not a lot of art implemented yet, though art being worked on. So we'd have about one level, and you can finish it from start to end. and this would give us time to discover all the beautiful bugs that we would need to take care of by beta. And so by beta, aside from getting all the bugs fixed, we would like to have the majority of the art implemented. This is in between midterm and the end of the semester. By the end of the semester, we'd like to have a great, beautiful, polished, vertical slice of our game. About 3 levels, give or take, 15 to 20 minutes long, so about just under an hour of gameplay. And the things that we'll need to look into. Now, the mechanics do seem a little simple out the gate. However, that doesn't mean they're easy to implement. I would like to have the design pretty much set in stone so we'd have something to hand to our coders and programmers so they can hit the ground running when we start. And I'm not sure if we'd have enough artists who are comfortable in the design aspect of the game with the robotic theme. So we would have to check that out. And we might actually have to change the theme of the game to accommodate for the skill of the people who come in. And lastly, we'd have to accommodate the scope for this amount of people who come in and their skill sets. And I pretty much need everything. If you're a competent texturer, if you're a competent animator, if you're a competent programmer and you're interested in doing work that is robotic in design, colorful and futuristic, and you would like to get something done for your portfolio, then this would be an opportunity for you. And if you're not sure if you're good enough, then I invite you to come talk to me, because sometimes you're not the best measure of your own skill. So that's Blast Vault. My name is Matthew Washington. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Matthew. Judges, do you have any questions for Matthew at this time?
In terms of the environment, I'm an environment artist, so I like to ask about that. Is it just a static traversal, or do you have any environment mechanics, physics, puzzly things that you're going to have to get through?
So there won't be any environmental physics. You won't be tipping over platforms, but there will be sort of natural obstacles in the way. So let's say you have a dip in the screen, and if you try to blast vault against it, you're going to fall. So you'd have to maneuver under it, stuff like that.
Great concept. I love the gameplay first kind of aspect of it, and Downwell I think is an excellent game to model after. Kind of leaning into that, I also want to aside from that, I want to ask, what are your story inspirations? Do you have any sort of story that you're thinking about?
I'm pretty much going to copy and paste the Mega Man story, except you're an intern, and the main character itself is a remote-controlled robot, and you're essentially trying to beat other scientists' robots, which are also piloted by their interns.
Okay. I think that's really cool, and I think that'd be cool to see that in that pitch.
The one thing that kind of confused me a little bit is this an arena level design, or is it linear?
It is linear, much like Mega Man or Metal Slug. There is a start and a finish to each level.
Okay, so you are going to have to go through with some real strong level design on this one then.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because during your pitch, I did not notice you put a lot of emphasis on the actual level design or what the mechanics that you're going to use for level design. I mean, it seems like you're essentially creating a run-and-gun platformer.
Yes.
And because of that, you have to realize that platformers have a lot of platform mechanics in them. You can look at the greatest platformers out there, like Yoshi's Island or something like that. I think there's about 40 or 50 different platform mechanics in that game itself, and they mix and match them throughout all the levels. So doing that, I mean, you got a lot to really kind of start to really go through and say, like, what are you going to do in this level? How are you going to ramp it up? How are you going to heighten it throughout the different levels? Where you need to have a lot of emphasis on just the spacing of it, the basics of level design that I didn't really see in the pitch very much. So if it is really going to be a linear platformer like a Mega Man game, then you're going to have to really put a lot more emphasis on what those mechanics are, not just the bouncing around mechanic, which is cool, but I need to see a lot more into the actual level design.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we're all asking about level design. I was going to ask the same thing. Have you considered like procedural level design, or having something that's a little bit more roguelike, or going through every time you play it's a little different? The reason why I ask is the scope of things to come. Like if you're going to come up with something linear, And you mentioned Mega Man. You're gonna have to do bosses. You're gonna have to come up with different power-ups. Enemies. Is that something that you've considered like to scope down, or you really want to keep with the linear fashion?
I think the random generation would add too much to the scope for what we can do within 15 weeks for a semester. So we just have to go with a very strong level design, which I do have in mind. But 5 minutes, you have to decide what to say, and sometimes you decide wrong.
Yeah.
But it will not be randomly generated, no.
So do you personally, are you a great level designer, or are you a great character designer?
I am a level designer.
Oh, great.
And a game designer. I don't design anything that requires some sort of pen, no.
I got you. Well, I did like that you kind of hinted on you want to do robots because it's something that is easy to model and to rig and to animate, which I think is really a great, strong thing to get into, because I've worked with AAU before on a couple of these things, and we got caught into a lot of issues with people wanting to do super realistic rigs and models and humans and things like that. So what you really need to go for is keep that very simple robot design, make it probably cute and endearing, that sort of thing, and make sure that it looks cuter than it has more parts of. So really be strong about it. If you have like orbitals or something like that are easy to animate around there, that are actually pushing you like you had in your demo, keep that theme. Don't try to make everything look really animated and smooth. Just keep it fun and gamey, and I think you'll be able to reach your goal with using the robots, and the rest of the crew will think very strongly of you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry guys, real quick. Do we have any questions here in the room?
I was just curious, how do you balance the platforming versus the shooting to propel yourself? Like, how do you balance that? I haven't seen a lot of games that have done that well. The game that comes to mind when I think about it is Broforce. In Broforce, there's a couple characters where you would jump and then you would shoot straight down as you moved along. But like, how do you balance like the recoil of the gun versus the desire to jump to the platform versus the desire to shoot the enemy over there?
So
it's a complex question. Sorry.
Each weapon has a different functionality for when you're grounded and when you're in the air. So let's take the shotgun, for example. If you're grounded, it has an infinite use, and it's under a cooldown. If you're in the air and you use it, that's when there's a kickback, and it's also more powerful. So it has a higher chance of actually downing an enemy, because you do need to down an enemy in order to continue doing that to get to another height. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, just competing desires, which I think is cool mechanics to have. I think it's cool to have competing desires for players. But how do you balance it? Like, if I'm jumping up to there and there's an enemy there and I'm like, I die by the shotgun, and I shoot it and then I blow myself off backwards into the pit of lava, right? Like, that might or might not feel good. I was just kind of curious, like, how to get that balance between those two mechanics, or three mechanics.
I understand what you're saying. That's a good question. So let's say you're on a ledge and you're about to go out. You can kill that enemy on the ledge, or let's say you're just in a run and gun section. You still have the option to just keep on shooting in the air. If something dies, you can keep going. So the run and gun portion enemies will be a little stronger. There's a chance that they might not die in one single aerial shot. And then the enemies that are actually made for the platforming sections, they'll still attack you, but they're weaker, so giving you a higher chance of actually downing them to keep going. I actually haven't thought in depth about your question. That's as best as I can answer it at the moment.
Okay, very cool. Celine, do we have any questions online?
We do not.
Okay. Judges, do you have any general feedback from Matt on his presentation, his products, that you haven't addressed with your questions already?
I think it was a great pitch. But one thing that would probably help a lot is to not only just show the mundane gameplay, but show that epic moment. There's no, you need a spike. Like maybe just an example of what like an epic moment would be in your game would probably help a lot.
Okay, thank you.
For me, I think I really like the pitch, but I think the first few slides were just text, and it just any image, even just the action of your gameplay, just playing and looping behind you, would do a lot for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the idea. I think that it would be very important to kind of map out the controls a little bit and think about what kind of toggles you want to do for the running and the gunning. Really get in there and just hold the controller and think in your mind, close your eyes, and really come out with that. And I'm sure it's in your mind right now, but you have to be able to put that onto paper so that when you hand it over to somebody else and they start to implement it, they understand your vision. And just make sure that whatever those mechanics are, that you're listing them out there, just bullet point them out there. Be very simple about it. Take a controller, put out, maps saying like, oh, the A button does this, X button does that, whatever it takes to get the point across on how the mechanics are going to work together, how you're going to toggle, how you're going to do a regular shot versus a blast rocket shot and that sort of thing. But all in all, I love the idea. I think it's really cool. Just make sure that all these ideas that are in your mind, you get them out on paper so that everybody can see them real quick. Even if it is just like, here's some of this is going to be level 1, here's the mechanics I'm going to use for level design and that, here's the enemies, here's what they're going to do, and here's kind of like the theme on what mechanics I'm going to be pushing for this one on this first level. So really get in there and make sure your ideas, everybody else knows them.
Thank you.
Really quick, I was going to say the same thing. Since your specialty is in level design, I would meet with an engineer, kind of map out all the controls and the knobs you'd want to do, and work on that control feel first, and then develop the level design in parallel. Build out the metrics and see how the jumps work, but focus on just the feel of that character moving in space with all the mechanics that you're thinking about, and everything else will come in place after that.
Yeah, one more thing. It's really clear you've thought through a lot of these details, even not having presented them. One of the things that you said you want to get all the design done before you hand it over to code. That never happens. So I'd say just get the programmers involved as early as possible, because you already seem to have a good enough sense of what you want. And if you can bring those programmers in to start helping you build that, you'll be able to course correct as you go.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt.
Hey guys, you're doing great.
So,
Volume's good if you guys can.
next up, we have what is currently known as Thief. Yes, we know, or they know, this cannot be a title that remains this. But we have Gary McGee and Joseph Hale. Where's the other microphone? Joe? All right, guys, your time will start whenever you are ready.
Hello everyone, my name is Gary.
And my name is Joe.
And we are here to talk about Thief. It's a working title, but it's what we're naming it for right now. Our elevator pitch. Thief, you play as a child named Crow who has the ability to jump in and out of books, where he sneaks around, steals treasure, and becomes rich. Thief is a 3D side-scroller with stealth-heavy gameplay, platforming, and unique puzzles. It's brimming with unique puzzles and lighthearted humor with quirky characters. You take control of Crow, you jump in and out of fairy tales, and you have this fairy godfather who helps you with these powers, and you get various trinkets that give you various abilities to help you go out on your journey.
Okay, next we're going to go over the mechanics. So like we said, it's a very stealth-heavy game. You'll have your standard sort of crouch and cover system, but also the world is also very interactable, so you can hide behind things like curtains or hide in closets, things of that sort. If the player is detected, he will be pursued, and once captured, it's game over, so we don't really have a health bar system. It's just you're caught, you're dead. So when you first start off, you're equipped with nothing more than a bag of marbles, which you can toss strategically to distract guards and things of that sort. But then later on, one of the first items you'll get is the King Slingshot, which you can use with more interactivity, such as taking out a chandelier above unsuspecting guards. Ammo is pretty easy to come by throughout the level because it's mostly just pebbles and things of that sort you can find in potted plants, stuff like that.
And here are some concepts we have. Early on, we started drawing crows and some enemies, and basically these are like what we have for our early development, and these are our current concepts. This is the little sister and the godfather. This is the trickster and the butler. And these are some storyboards that we have. You, Joseph?
So we got our inspiration from a couple different games. So this one,
Bravely Default.
Bravely Default is more the aesthetic of the characters, as you can see, and then we actually like the painted sort of look from the Assassin's Creed. Gameplay also Assassin's Creed, since it is a stealth-based game. We do like the whole 3D side-scroller effect. We're also going to take some stuff from inside.
And here's our marketing. We have some screenshots from our game. Take out unsuspecting guards, loot fantastic treasures, as well as meet strange characters. And here's a little extra with our icon and some advertising that we have going on.
Okay, we have a little mock-up video of some of our progress we made.
And that was our trailer for it. And here's our current team. We have Amy Gao, who is the lead director and concept artist of our game. We have Joseph Hale right here, who is the game designer and scripter for our game. Liz, she's a 3D modeling and rigging. Ratul Patel, he's the 3D modeling for environment and textures. Ellen, she's helped with 3D models. Myself, I'm the level designer and UI UX designer. Daniel Helling, he does sound design for us. And Nick Cunningham, who does game design and scripting. And that's Steve.
Alrighty, thank you guys. Judges, do you have any questions at this time for Gary and Joseph?
Yes. All right, so it's a game about stealth, right?
Correct.
And you showed us one of the mechanics, which was kind of like a crawl and kind of hide sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you briefly went over, I think, a grapple shot. Is that
like a slingshot?
Like
yes.
a slingshot sort of thing, and then you knock things down and then manipulate the environment.
Yes.
All right. Where else do you think you're going to go after those two basic ones? Are you going to just ramp up the slingshot to heighten it as you go on with upgrades and everything, or the stealth with upgrades, or are you going to introduce new objects that the player can use, new tools?
There might be a little mix of both. We had considered upgrading stuff like the slingshot because they'll probably be one of the more used items, but there's also other items that grant different abilities. Like in our little play demo, we also have like Pegasus boots to give you a double jump, and it'll help you get to new areas. Usually, it's kind of like the Zelda style, where you get a new item to progress to the next area.
As well as that, with our stealth, we do have like items that enhance. We have a cloak that makes you invisible for a short amount of time, as well as like you can hide behind curtains, under tables, and closets and stuff like that.
I see. And one quick follow-up, and I'll let somebody else have it. The point is to get treasure in this from the fairy tale books. Is that
Yes, correct.
okay? Now, what does that do exactly? What's the ultimate goal of obtaining all this treasure?
Well, so there is a backstory. It is a story-driven game. Your main character is recently orphaned, but he does own a library, a family library. So the whole point is to you're just trying to get by. Your fairy godfather is not very helpful. He tries to give it to you to stealing things to pay for food in your house and to take care of your baby sister.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That could be fun then.
What do I get to do with the goodies? Like, I saw a lot of stealthing. I didn't see any stealing.
So, in the game, when you get goodies, it turns into currency. So this currency helps you get different outfits, as well as like just different items that you can use throughout the game. We have it set up so where like when you're in these stories, you can wear like outfits that are similar to the world that you're in. So Crow, he was like in a kingdom area, so like he could have like peasant clothes or like royal clothes or stuff like that he could purchase in that area.
So a lot of the environments are very corridor, hallway type. Are you thinking of any other types of environments to allow for like vertical or, you know, a little wider type of gameplay to enhance?
Yes, we definitely are. Right now, we are thinking basically an outdoor area with a lot of like, I guess like nature and stuff going on. But as of right now, for our prototype, we just have corridors.
I noticed the camera changed quite a bit during the presentation. It went through, you know, kind of 2.5 to 2, and then behind the back, kind of first person. Can you talk a little bit about how those camera decisions were made, like why you decided to go down the hallway, and how the thieving mechanic or the, you know, whatever stealth mechanic you have kind of changes with the camera?
So if I'm correct, were you like questioning how like in one scene it was basically like, looking down the hall directly?
Yes.
That was for like trailer purposes. The game for the most part is like facing sideways at you.
Okay. You know, I think you guys did a good job at the beginning with the slides. You know, having the concept art with a little bit of a description about, you know, what the mechanic is good. I'd probably just reduce the text just a little bit and just kind of like talk it through. When it comes to the story, you mentioned it's a story game. Like, how do you guys plan to tell the story through the gameplay? Will it be cutscenes? Will it be like inside where there's like no talking and it's like through you know, through the acting of the characters?
Yeah, there's actually dialogue with the characters. In the beginning of the prototype that we have, there is a basically prologue which tells you like how your character has gotten to this point in the game. So there's stuff like we do plan on having cutscenes and stuff like that. As you can see, we had storyboards pointing to where our camera would be during those sections.
All right, one more question for me. You're talking about the stealth gameplay, and you said that whenever you're caught, that's just it right there, and there's no redemption. Whenever I see that in a game, whenever people have pitched that to me, or whenever I worked on a game that has a stealth mechanic, and somebody mentions like, oh, whenever you're caught, the game just ends or will reset you or whatever it is. I always say, don't do that. Figure out something else. Figure out a way for instant redemption, whether it's, you know, they're on high alert like Metal Gear and you have to run away and hide or something like that for a little bit, or you have to knock them out like in the Real Thief game, the original one, and all sorts of other mechanics that use stealth. The best ones, in my opinion, are the ones that allow redemption after the fact that you're found, because nobody ever wants to be reset. I stopped playing Zelda Wind Waker because the very beginning of it, there's a stealth section, and Spotlight hits you and it resets you. It frustrated me so much because it's just poor game design, and I never went back and played it. So that's my burden to live with.
On a high note, I think the overall presentation was really strong. The sense of fantasy of going into fairy tales is, I can feel it, I see it, I want to play it. I think that's anything a pitch should ever do. So good job.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
All right, do we have any questions in-house, if I may, please?
Hi, I had a question about the books that you mentioned in the game. You mentioned he has a huge library. Are they going to be books from our world, like famous stories, or books that you make up from their world?
That is something that we've like discussed if we wanted to like relate books to real life stories that people have written before. But as of right now, we have not came to an agreement to if we were going to do that.
Any other questions in-house? Yes.
You guys said Thief and it's a working title. Ever thought like Snatch and Steal or name something with marbles? Since that's what you use.
Well, that's like such a small part of the game that it didn't feel appropriate to name it something like that.
All right, that makes sense.
One more.
So I heard you like saying purchasing stuff in one stage, that kind of thing, right? So are you going to make a game like, because I played like games like Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy that you can go into levels and go out anytime you want, or and there are like games like Castlevania, you're just going stage after stage, that kind of scroller. Like which kind of game?
Think just like Mario 64 or like Sly Cooper, where you can just jump in and out of that level whenever you want. That's how we plan on having it.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions online? Okay.
Scrolling. Would this be the final art style, or how do you envision to evolve it?
Well, from the concept art, that is the art style that we were going to. But from what you saw in the gameplay, that is something that we had up for a prototype, something that we wanted to get done immediately.
Okay. Judges, do you have any further feedback for Gary or Joe at this point?
Last thing is that I think it looks really fun. Looks like it could be something that I'd even play. And I like the general theme about the story tales, the fairy tales, and the stories and all that sort of thing. Again, as I said to Andrew earlier, is that lean into that. Make it where your fairy godfather is trying to build out a collection. He's reading you stories to the thief kid, saying like, "Oh man, in this book they have such a great treasure. I want you to go in there and get it for me." Make him just kind of a weird character that's like the King Ball Cosmos or something. You know, really get in there and find the voice for all the characters. Make them quirky. Make the whole thing really stick together that way. But all in all, very good.
Thank you.
I think one thing, art-wise, you mentioned you're jumping in and out of fairy tales. I think that'd be something to play up in your presentation to make each level look a little different. Say, you know, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
Say lava, you know, one, and then like some
Yeah.
tree level another. I mean, to play up that fantasy part of it, where each new thing doesn't look.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's something we've talked about. Like the initial idea was like a king, like medieval like theme, and then like we jumped in the idea of like, oh, what if it's like Atlantis or like the Jungle Book or something like that. So we've talked about like different ideas or whatever, but yeah. So.
Cool. Yeah. I thought the pitch was very good. The deck itself had a lot of good information. I think the vision was pretty clear. It's at that stage where you just need to edit down a little bit, you know, like reduce the text, like I mentioned. The question I had about camera is confusing, so I would maybe remove that first part where you open up with the establishing shot of going down, so there isn't that confusion, and kind of stick to the game camera view, and I think you'll be able to sell this pretty quickly.
And then for me, show me goodies, show me treasure, gems. So I want to feel tension with hiding from a knight and at the same time wanting to steal the treasure that's right next to him.
Okay, for sure.
Alrighty, thank you, Gary and Joe. So, next up we have Obliterator. Mike Bennett will be talking about this product. Yes? Mike Griffin. I'm sorry, I keep calling you Bennett for some reason. Okay. Just remember the product, it's Mike, okay? Here you go, Mike. I apologize.
No worries, no worries.
Oh, you want this one? This one, actually.
You can
Yep,
hold that one.
we keep going.
All right. Bring this guy over here. All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Hi, folks. My name is Mike Griffin.
and I'm here presenting Obliterator. It's a VR first-person shooter that's like Robo Recall with the brutality of Doom set in the world of Space Hulk Deathwing. Pretty much the concept of the game is you travel the galaxy, meet alien races, and rip them apart. With the hook being the brutality of dismembering enemies with multiple different weapons and powers. The main pillars that I've been dealing with has been getting VR hand interactions, pretty much like opening doors, picking up weapons and people. I also want to have the enemy interactions set up so you can, pretty much like how Doom has the glory kills, we'll have a similar mechanic where you have to weaken them before you can even touch them. Except for like the grunts, you can just pick them up and tear them in half and throw them away. And I also want to have an upgrade system in there as well so the player can augment their own abilities. Like, for example, they got a flamethrower on their left arm that can pretty much change what kind of fire it's throwing. The target platform is the Oculus Rift plus the Touch, aiming to go for Steam and Greenlight, with the target being VR users, FPS users, and sci-fi lovers. A major part of the gameplay inspiration was Robo Recall's dismemberment mechanic, but with this game I want to go a little bit step further and have more parts where you can just tear them in pieces. Another inspiration was Space Hulk Deathwing for its level art design as well as its maze-like design, I want to say. I mean, every path pretty much leads to where you need to go. And the other inspiration was obviously Doom and how brutal it would get. And the art style was mostly Space Hulk Deathwing because I like going through the churches. The goals, if we got picked, would be halfway through the semester to have the mechanics working, the tutorial level blocked out, with the main 3 weapons functional, as well as a tutorial enemy who we could pretty much just test everything on. At the end of the semester, it would pretty much be the full tutorial level with everything working and arted. And the main risk with this is if we don't get the grab mechanics functioning properly as well as the weapons, it's just going to be there. I mean, otherwise, why bother using VR? And as for the students we need, pretty much everything other than programmers and scripters. And here's a small little video showing pretty much how far we've gotten so far. Pretty much we have a functioning teleport mechanic and the flamethrower. You can also pick some on fire, he engulfs in flames. And you can pick him up, set him on fire while you're still holding him. And we also have a functioning weapon. And pretty much just shows why reasons we need to have models that are multiple parts and not just one solid skin. Yeah. Should have seen on Friday, blew off every limb and it just stretched all over the level. It was kind of disturbing. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Judges, do you have any questions for Mike Griffin?
Hey, Mike Griffin. Yeah, I would like for you to go in a little bit more into the dismembering. I worked on a game called Splatterhouse years ago, and we did dismembering, and it was really cool in the game when it was done. By the time it got out, it was great. Yeah. But it took us 2 years to get it right. It's hard. It is not easy. You know, maybe the Unreal tools are a little bit better for this sort of thing. Because Robo Recall does a pretty good job doing it.
I've actually been trying to re-engineer that system. Although I want to add more parts so where you can grab.
Yeah, and of course, you know, they're doing all robots, so, you know, it's a clean break on everything they're doing.
Yeah.
Because they're breaking in all the right joints and everything like that. There's not any sort of visceral blood or guts or anything streaming out of it. When we were doing Splatterhouse, we had to do all that sort of stuff to make it look realistic for something that's made out of blood and guts.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your biggest thing if you're going to try and do that. Because if that's your only hook, I mean, else you're just making a gallery shooter in VR, which Robo Recall already is.
Yeah.
So to me, the question that I'd have to ask you is, what is going to make this better than Robo Recall? What are you doing that is different than what they are already doing? Because when I was reading your bullet points up there, I felt like I was just reading Robo Recall for the most part, but instead with aliens instead of robots.
Yeah. Well, I think the main thing I'm trying to do that's different than Robo Recall is, well, one, having your enemies be like actual living creatures that would like react to when you grab them. Because when you pick up an enemy in Robo Recall, he kind of just stares at you, doesn't do anything.
And why do you think that the character goes limp whenever you pick them up in Robo Recall?
I just figured there was like some failsafe in the grapple, like, or in that those, like at some point when you grab them, they're like, why did they add handles? And I was just wanted to do something different than that because, like, yeah, it was fun ripping them apart the first couple times. It's like you aren't reacting to anything I'm doing, and I also want to have like bigger levels with more ways to go around things because Robo Recall, real linear for what it was. Like you could teleport to different places, but you couldn't go everywhere. Like I want to go like if one level there's this big open space and there's like a ledge you can get to, teleport up there and just hose everyone down with like autocannon fire, for example. As well as also you'd be fighting enemies who could also do more damage and like take more than what you could normally do. But
real quick follow-up on that
Shoot.
is the reason I'm assuming that Robo Recall did it is because with VR you are set to a very limited refresh rate that you have to maintain or else VR breaks down. So they were very careful about what you could see at any given time, and that's why there's a lot of just road cones and sorts of weird things that invisible barriers in Robo Recall, and the way they kind of like lead you down a path to an arena that is then kind of pushed off where there's all sorts of line of sight blockers, and that always just keeps the refresh rate up to what 120 or whatever it is for VR. So you have to maintain that sort of thing. So I would say it's probably pretty unrealistic to at this point in the world of VR with these headsets that have to maintain a certain refresh rate, it's going to be hard to push that without a lot of tearing and that sort of thing. So be very careful about what you're promising versus what you're going to get. Run some tests, get up there and make like a huge tower top and look down, try to populate a bunch of things down there, and just see what the refresh rate is going to look like.
All
on
right,
that
we'll
sort of
do.
thing.
When I see pitches for VR, I always like to ask, what makes it VR? Are there any mechanics that you are taking advantage that says, hey, this is not a console, this is for VR?
I believe like the main thing with VR that was why it needed to be that way is because I thought about this question. I was trying to remember. I think the reason why I wanted to be VR is so the player can actually interact with everything physically. It's like with first person, you just walk up to something, press a button, and then you see the animation. That's not actually your hands doing it, for example.
So just for the novelty of seeing
I,
it.
like
Or do you
in
have any mechanics like say you can possess an app and then you can unlock a lock, like walk into the door or something like that? Do you have any type of mechanics where you
we've
can
been
really take advantage?
kicking some ideas around, but the main thing we've been working on this semester has been just trying to get the grapple up and functional. We figured once we're done with that, we can move on to the other things.
Is there a gameplay purpose to dismemberment?
The one thing I was thinking is, have you ever played 40K Space Marine by any chance?
I've seen it, yeah.
Well, one mechanic they did, when you executed an enemy, you'd gain your health back. I was figuring doing something like that, and also kicking around another mechanic, like if you defeat like an enemy like Lieutenant, and like you tear his head off, and then you see a bunch of grunts, toss it at them, and they just panic.
I'd encourage you to push more into that. If dismemberment is such an interesting mechanic to you, then have aliens with weapons for arms that you can dismember and then use, and sort of roll those things together so that there's a reason I want to go up there and dismember them rather than just shoot them.
Gotcha.
You mentioned a little bit about teleporting around. Can you talk a little bit about the plan for the level design and what you're thinking about for that part of the game?
Mostly when it comes to teleportation, the reason we went with it was just to avoid the motion sickness problem. And also to give the player something like if they teleport, the time slows down when you start it, then it keeps going after you get out, so it gives the player time to get their bearings back. But most of the levels are pretty much going to be stuck in corridors, except for like we have been thinking of doing some outdoor levels so you can move around more, but once again, the tutorial is pretty much just going to be the one level in a building.
Yeah.
Well, spaceship, correction.
Okay, actually, do we have any questions in the room?
Hey Mike, thanks for the presentation.
Yep.
So I had a question. When you were showing your demo, there was weapons, picking up weapons and casting flamethrower,
Yeah.
which kind of seemed like a player ability. Are they two different mechanics or are they just one thing?
Right now they're two separate mechanics, because the flamethrower itself is going to have a lot more to it when we finally complete it. Like, you can use it to like wave off an area, and the enemy would have to go around the fire, and
Do
it could
they
use it.
somehow link separate? Do they like link differently with the dismemberment, or?
I think the flamethrower as it doesn't do dismemberment right now; it just burns them, and the gun, as I said, it only pretty much what you'd use the flamethrower for is weakening an enemy, and then you use the gun to pretty much blow them to bits.
Okay, so you can only dismember through a hand, melee combats, right?
You can dismember them through melee as well as also just blowing off limbs with the gun.
What about licensing with, because you said it's basically Spacewalk Deathwing, but Games Workshop is pretty notorious for their legal department.
Yeah. Honestly, given this point, I haven't really looked into that much. I wanted to get something up and functional first before I even thought about it.
Do we have any questions online? Oh, nope. So yeah, actually, we do have one more question here. You want this, Kitty? Okay, sure.
Sorry, yeah. Have you prototyped the whole grabbing and holding part of it? Because that seems like the hardest part to do.
We do have a prototype for it. We're getting into the part where you can start grabbing the limbs, because pretty much all you can do now is just pick the guy up and throw him.
Yeah, attaching to the right spot on the arm to tear it off seems like it'd be kind of difficult. Like all that stuff looks like it'd be hard to do.
Yeah, I've been looking into it. It seems one way we've been kicking around is there are actually multiple grab points on the body. If you put your hand in the chest, you're able to grab them, and then the plan is to pretty much take the base collider and shrink it down to expose the smaller ones on the limbs themselves. So when you go to grab it, it's like, oh, is the hand in this limb? Okay, attach that limb to the hand. Pretty much functioning with the skeletal mesh.
Cool, it's good that you're thinking about it.
Okay, so we have one more question.
I've had experience with a bunch of VR stuff, especially I've done a forklift simulator, and the movement of moving your head back and forth. People do get motion sickness or a small headache after taking it off. Have you found like some way to fix that, or is it just gonna stay that for a while?
We've been kicking around the idea of like if the player turns at a certain speed, it would like dim the screen a little bit. But other than that, haven't really looked into it that much, unfortunately.
All right. It looks good though.
Yeah.
All right, judges, do you have any general feedback for Mike?
Yeah, I'll start off. I think it's a great idea that you're going down this path. Legalities, don't worry about that. You can always create a new IP and change a couple of I's to an E, and then you're good to go again. So I wouldn't worry about that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Make it your own universe, and if it's derivative, then that's fine, whatever. But what you really need to do is you have to look at the gameplay mechanics themselves. You really have to focus on that dismemberment, and you got to find out that magic of why you're dismembering them. How does it benefit you? And you need to make that part of the core loop there. You have to make it whether you're drinking the blood or somehow absorbing their essence or whatever it is, or like the only way to get weapons are to break their arms off and then grab their gun from that sort of thing. Whatever it is, pretend that you have a huge engineering team and kind of get into it and just pretend that you can come up with these great ideas, and then take a look at what you actually can do and start to build down from that and make concessions at that point. But just make sure it all feels organic and that all your mechanics flow into each other and complement each other and feel like they are part of the same game.
I can't say it any better than Alex just did. Make sure your mechanics work together.
So in terms of VR environments, corridors can get very nauseating.
Yeah.
I think the challenge for you in creating that big space is to establish a landmark. And that doesn't necessarily have to be geometry. You could do it with lighting, strong light source in one direction. So as they're turning, they have an immediate orientation point, like, oh, that's where the corridor where the light is, or something like that. But to establish, imagine you toss yourself into a room. You want to know exactly where you are. That's what I do in San Francisco. I toss myself into any city or any street. I'm like, oh, Transamerica building. That's where I am. The bay is over here. The bay is over here. You want to get that immediate, like, I know where I am, kind of.
Okay.
And that'll kind of help with the nausea.
All right.
Just really quick, I think you mentioned a couple game references. Don't assume that everyone knows what Space Hulk is, or Robo Recall, or the other ones. Over-explain most of the time when you're talking to everyone.
Alright.
The pitch deck started off really good. I was really impressed with that concept art, and then the kind of like the deck style kind of fell apart from there. So I'll just make it a little bit more presentable, and kind of explain those things that we're talking about, and definitely the mechanics probably the biggest thing.
All right.
So I have to say, this is the first time ever here at school that I've ever heard anyone encourage a student to rip off someone's limbs and beat them with them. So mark this in history. Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
Now, before we go to the final pitch, where is it? Just a reminder, make sure to scan the QR code, go to this link, and vote for your favorite pitches. This is going to be open in probably about 5 to 10 minutes and then be available for only 30 minutes after pitch night is complete. So make sure, again, to vote for your favorites to get them in development. Okay? We good, Scott? All righty. So last and definitely not least, we have Recall with Han Yan and Andy C, correct? Yeah. All righty. So if you guys would, please. Microphones. All right, give me one moment. Actually, you guys both need to be here so you're in frame. Oop.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Andy, and this is the game we want to pitch for tonight. It's called Recall, and I am the scripter and the designer in this team. And we also have other 2 team members who is currently working on this project. One is Han Yang, and one is Coco. And next. So what is Recall? Basically, this is a game which kind of similar to the Inside. So it is kind of like a sci-fi version of Inside. And it is a 3D platformer about an abandoned geisha robot finding herself. And in Recall, heroine has the ability to move the object around. Like here is our heroine, and here's an object. When you come close to an object, it will shine, and the player can have the ability to move it around. And why we want this ability is because this is a puzzle game, so we want to use this ability to solving some puzzles all over the level. Next. And this is a video showing a prototype we are currently have. As you can see, player is moving kind of like a traditional 2D platformer, but in a 3D level. And also she has the ability to move the things around, solving the puzzle and interact with the some element in the game. And following, Han Yang will introduce some more details in this project.
Hi, my name is Han Yan, and I'm going to show you some of our currently progress. The picture in the middle is the first level we have already made, which is you just saw. and the other 4 pictures is showing the levels we just finished built, which is a factory level. It is more bigger and interesting. We also have more complex and fun, interesting puzzles in it. For the high concept, we want to create a game which is a single-player 3D platformer puzzle game. It tells a story about the journey about a robot girl finding herself. And for the gameplay, basically you just solve puzzles by interacting with the environment, and you use the hack, which is your special power to help you solve those puzzles. For the hook, we want to combine these three elements together to create interesting gameplay, which the intriguing stories and well-designed puzzles, and also Japanese cyberpunk style environment, which is a new style, I think. It's hard to see. Our target platform is PC. In order to make this game control more efficient and we designed only use keyboard as the only default control method. Here's the inspirations games. Our game is super familiar, similar to the Inside and Black Fall. Those 2 games has some pretty good puzzles and very beautiful levels, which we also want to make in our game. For the character setting, in our setting, we designed our character to be a stylized geisha girl. And for the environment, we want to create a sci-fi factory which has the Japanese traditional elements. The goals and scope. By the middle of this semester, we want to complete a level which is very well designed and built. We want our core systems are all functional and playable. 50 to 80% interactions, puzzles, and events are all settled. By the end of this semester, we want to make a really good and polished prototype game. We do have some technical risk assessment. We have these challenges that we met, but for the person who want to join us, you don't need to worry about that. We will stuck with those troubles because we have the essential abilities to solve those. But we really want expert person to make this game great. And here's the students that we need. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions?
All right. Great job, Andy and Han. Judges, do you have questions for Team Recall?
Absolutely. All right. I'll start off, and I hope maybe you guys have a different opinion. I'm not a fan of Inside. I know that. I don't know.
I like Inside.
I don't like it. I think it's like
It is a good game.
a walk right simulator to me. Those limbos, I can't stand those games. But that's fine. If you want to make those games, there's certainly an audience for those, and it's actually a pretty good audience, I think, that has good adoption rates. So that's fine if you want to make that. I'm just not going to be the person that's going to give you the best advice for this one, besides just the obvious things. But for me, the thing that stood out the most is that I don't know why I'm a geisha robot.
Oh, because we have a story that is talking about, like, there's a person who owned this geisha robot, but he have some reasons that abandoned this robot for several years. And the geisha robot wake up at a period which, when she woke up, the world is already abandoned. So the player need to control this robot to figure out why the world is abandoned and why she is being abandoned by her pre-owner. And the reason we choose geisha robot for our heroine is because I want to fit this character into our Japanese style environment.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
All right, I guess the thing that kind of makes me go, I mean, I'm not super familiar with the history of geishas, but I had thought that they're kind of groomed to be a companion for a man. Is that kind of like the theme that she's trying to find her mate she was meant for, something like that? Like, what's kind of the underlining point of the journey? Like, it feels like a Wall-E-esque journey going on, like Disney's Wall-E sort of thing. Find your soulmate, find your reason for existing in a post-apocalyptic world where what you once were is now no longer a thing anymore. I get that, but I think because you guys put up on bullet points, we're going to have a great story. And you can say that you're going to have a great story, but then when you give me no bullet points on some highlights of your ideas that you got rolling around in your head, if you're not putting them up there and you're just putting up great story, what am I going to take away from that? I'm going to be like, okay, they're going to come up with a great story, but what is it? Give me a little taste of it, sort of thing. And you don't have to give me a taste right at the moment. We can talk about it as we go on. But that's kind of the thing. If you are going to make one of these games like Inside that are very intriguing, and it is an intriguing game because it's told, with very minimum dialogue. I don't think any, but just with cutscenes and the actions that you do in the game, kind of build this world. So if you are going to build that sort of world, make sure that you're thinking about those kinds of elements and storytelling bits for creating this story about this lost geisha that whatever you want to make for your story. I'm not going to give you a plot here, but just think about that sort of thing and make sure that when you're presenting it, you're telling me kind of some highlights of that.
Okay, thanks.
Really fun pitch. I like the idea of a Japanese cyberpunk style, and I
Thank you.
think the style that you have already presented, it makes me attracted to it. I would say push the camera even further, get more dynamic angles wherever you can. As far as the moving ability, like the geisha robot can push and pull it almost like telepathically without touching, or
So I gradually move the object. Yeah.
and how does that relate to her being a geisha robot?
It relates to she is a robot, but it's not related to she is a geisha.
Right.
The story will connect to the geisha setting after this factory level.
And do you have any other abilities for the robot?
The ability for the robot for now currently just have the hacking ability, but and also she can hack to sound system to stop the fire or start the water pipe, make the pipe flows out of the water. Yeah, some kind of that mechanism. For the future, we are thinking about maybe adding more kind of like hairspin or using her umbrella to do something to relate to the puzzle. Yeah.
I also felt a little bit of a disconnect with the geisha robot and the environments, although it's still robotic in a way. But how are the puzzles enabling her to find herself?
For some of the puzzles, after you solve the puzzles, the player will trigger a story that the game will show some picture or show some dialogue that tells the story to the player.
And that's related to the puzzle?
Yeah, that's related to the puzzle. Wait a minute.
Actually, for that factory, that's like a robot factory which creates a robot or destroy a robot. Our background story is this girl was created by a doctor, and she's a Japanese doctor, and cause since this girl is a bio robot, so she has some superpower which make her creator feel scared and being crazy, so she's being abandoned that way. So the environment and the background story they are relate to each other, I think.
My comment is mostly on, or my question is, story and visuals. I think you guys did a pretty good job of showing me how it's gonna look in the theme, but there wasn't a lot of emphasis on the actual gameplay portion. Alex kind of touched upon walking simulator, and I get that kind of thing. And then you mentioned kind of it's going to be on the keyboard.
Yeah.
So in terms of controls, and you mentioned the keyboard's going to be more efficient for gameplay. How would you interact with the hacking? How does that actually work? What's that mechanic? And maybe can you give one or two different ways that geisha would use that mechanic to solve a puzzle.
For instance, you can see some the first picture we have is this picture. So when the geisha comes close to the cylinder, if she can hack into those object, or she can move those objects, the object will have an outline with it. And at that moment, player can just push the control to control the object. And at the meanwhile, the keys you control the geisha will change to controlling the object.
Do you move the object with the mouse or
no? Just keyboard.
Okay.
Yeah. And after you move the object to the position you want to move, you can click the control again and release it. And there's another mechanic in the game that you can hack into the system, like the button at the very behind, like here. When you are able to interact with that button, the button will also have a highlight outline, and you are also using the control. But it's not for that situation. You are not controlling the switch to move around. You just trigger it and maybe move the door or move the ladder down.
Okay.
Like that.
Do we have any other questions in house? May I? Oh, I got one. Any questions? Yes.
So the way we blend it together is like the first level is the factory, so it has a cyberpunk style object or some images in this level. At the second level will be in like Jinja, which is like a Japanese temple, and because you are gradually going through from the factory to the temple, so it is kind of gradually merge these two concepts together while the player is playing in this game. Thanks.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions online? All righty. Mind if I borrow? What happened to your mic? Can I borrow your mic, please? Thank you.
I have a couple little questions, I believe. It says, will the game be on a set path, or will you be able to move in all directions?
The character will set on the path. As you can see, while the character moving, there's some depth changing in the game, but the player just pushing the right arrow and left arrow. The game will automatically move the character's steps. And you also can climbing up the ladder. And sometimes when you climbing up the ladders, it will change the player's steps as well. Yeah, so, but player will not able to directly move the player into the level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another question. What does it mean by finding herself? Will she be discovering something after each level?
Like the girl is kind of like lost all her memory because she was like kind of like
amnesia. Sorry, what? Amnesia. So she's kind of like got an amnesia like people. So she will need to. That's why we call this game recall. Yes, because she, as long as she goes through the levels, she also gain her memories back, and she gradually knew what's happening before she is being abandoned.
Okay, so judges, feedback for our student team.
Absolutely. I like the general idea of the whole entire thing. I worked on a little project called Read Only Memories, which is kind of like a cyberpunk set in San Francisco in the future, and it kind of had a lot of the same themes. Part of the main story was that you take kind of in care of this robot that is very infantile, and likes to explore, and you kind of take care of it and teach it all about the world as you're going through with it. To me, that was the highlight of the game, was that it's the Bambi discovery moments that you have in there. What I mean by that is the classic Disney where you're with this character, you're seeing the things this character is seeing for the first time, and you're delighted or intrigued by its intrigue and delight on that sort of thing. So those are the things you're going to have to push on this sort of game, at which point I think you're going to have to really kind of animate your character and kind of make sure that everything that it's doing is looking really surprised, really endearing, and if the game is supposed to be cute, then make sure it's cute. If it's supposed to, it to me looks like it's supposed to be kind of cute. Maybe I'm completely wrong in that. Maybe it's going to be more like Inside, where twist ending sort of thing. But whatever it is, make sure you kind of play into that sort of thing. And even if you're playing into those tropes until the very end where the robot explodes or whatever it is, and it's a horribly catastrophe ending sort of thing, make sure you play up the player's expectations until that point, if there is a twist in that sort of thing. That would be my number one, just and when it comes to storytelling in this. The next thing that I would suggest that you kind of take a look at is that your environmental puzzles. Start to brainstorm those and get those out there. I saw a couple of screenshots, and it looked like you had some classic laser beam puzzles going on, and how you're going to mix those up, how you're going to escalate those and ramp those up, heighten those as they go on. Think about those mechanics that you can heighten as you go on. Don't try to make a bunch of very unique setups that are foreign to the player every single time they encounter something. You need to be able to let them see a puzzle and kind of start to understand how they're going to beat it, how they're going to solve it, that sort of thing. So make sure you're doing that. So start the brainstorming process now and get a huge list if you already don't have one, and think about how you're going to heighten that up after that. Other than that, I think it could look very pretty, and I know that's what a part of these games are, is that they have to be very pretty, very spectacular looking. They have to have the mood, the feel, the lighting right at every single time. So think about that sort of stuff. Really dive into the lighting system on this one right here if it's going to be one of these kinds of games that are very moody in that sort of respect. And then my last thing is think about a controller. I mean, you can still press right on the controller just as much as you can press right on a keyboard. So think about the support's usually just given in Unity for free and also Unreal. So think about those sorts of things.
Okay, thanks.
For me, I think it does definitely on the keyboard and controller. When you said keyboard only, I had my design spidey sense went off, and I was like, no, controller. We like controllers. Okay. So even if it's just one, you only do keyboard or controller, I'd say try controller first. Okay, as far as the pitch goes, you got my attention. The art style is beautiful. I'm drawn to it. My expectation in fantasy fell a little bit flat when you said, when I realized that the gameplay all revolves around her being a robot and not so much about her character coming through in the gameplay. I think you've got the story and the artwork all represent who she is in the world, but I don't see that who she is coming out in her gameplay abilities. So in the, like hacking is robot, right, but what is specifically unique to her?
Yeah, that's one thing we need to figure out in the future.
Figure out the Geisha gameplay.
I think for me, you kind of started us when she was already on her journey.
Yeah.
Where I think it would benefit to kind of give a lot of backstory in terms of environment as well. Maybe you can start off with an environment that supports, like, oh, this is a geisha robot. Maybe she started in an office or something like that, or something that's, because like starting us right in the factory itself, I was trying to make the connection, like right away, like geisha robot, factory. So just establishing it in the beginning a little bit to kind of take care of all those questions right away.
Okay.
I think that would help.
Okay, thanks.
Alex, pretty much everything I was going to say. The video, I was pretty excited when it first came on. You know, it was kind of showing the style and, you know, how animation. Too much walking going on. I think you just Don't do a lot of walking. Even if you have to hand animate and kind of present some of the puzzle ideas that you guys have, it'll help sell the gameplay a lot more. It's just lacking in the gameplay area for me for this game. You have a really cool title. Recall was cool. It wasn't until we asked about it to find out how that actually fits into the story. So, fold that into how you discover the abilities, unfold the story, and I think it'll come together a lot better. And do consider using a controller or maybe the mouse to move the thing, because I think it's going to get a little bit boring if you're just going up to a button or an interactive object and pressing it to move it to a certain place. So, keep developing those ideas, and hopefully the game comes out of there.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Alrighty. Oops, did you have something else? All right, thank you very much. If you would, please. So let's give a round of applause to all of our student pitches tonight. This is not easy, so. So, is this live now?
Yeah. So hey guys, check your email. You should see a link. Did not get the link. I can flash up the other one on the screen. Hey guys, I'm Scott. So check your email. If you RSVP'd for the Eventbrite, you should get the link, the survey link. If not, I'm going to bring up another link that you can just type in or scan in. Make sure you only take it once, please. Be honest. And thanks everyone for your time. Now, I would like to have the judges give one last little bit of feedback. Just in general, how did we do?
How did we do?
As a school.
Oh, that was awesome. No. I'm super impressed with everybody's presentation. I came in here totally blind, not knowing what to expect, and I'm inspired and I'm excited. So if you made me inspired and excited, I'm really excited for you and the rest of your semester of what you get to turn these things into.
I'm really excited to come here too. I've had to do pitches recently for the projects that I've been on. And a lot of it is how you present your ideas. So I mentioned a little bit about being confident. Don't downplay any of the work that you're doing. Don't make any excuses for why something isn't in the way that it is. Sell the idea. Visual elements are good. Ask great artists around you to do at least one good key piece of art to kind of sell the idea. I think that's mostly what all that you need. And I think the running theme for a lot of what was happening is, work on the mechanics. Work on the gameplay itself. The story will come along, but when it comes to the actual game itself, like, people are going to be looking for what the gameplay hook is, and put a lot of more attention onto that.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. The one thing I'd say is, like, when you're up there making a pitch, show how much fun it is. Don't be scared. Don't be like, oh, like, this is what's going to happen. Show them it's fun. Like, hey, this is what's going to happen, And at this point, bam, you want that bam. So as you're pitching, keep that in mind that people are like, they want to get excited, and you need to provide it for them.
Absolutely. Bring that energy with you up on stage. Don't really think about the things you have on the screen behind you. Let those speak for themselves. Talk from your heart. Really go into the mechanics that you're up there and you're excited about. Remember, you pinned all these out. When you're writing them out, you were very excited about them. Be excited when you're up there, and that energy is going to show through, and everybody else is going to really jump on board with you, because that's what it comes down to when it comes to pitching something, is that you're pitching your leadership alongside this great game idea, and you want people to follow you into battle here.
All right. Thank you so much, judges, for your time. We would like to impose on you a little bit longer to deliberate on our decision here. Again, thank you to all students who pitched tonight. You guys did an absolutely great job. Again, I know this is not easy, so be proud of what you've done today. You've impressed people in this industry, okay? So, Scott, we need to deliberate and make a decision. So you should be hearing from us overall within the week.
Yeah, we won't have a decision tonight, but we will make announcements later in the week. So keep watching your email, those of you guys who signed up. If you didn't, please, you've still got a few more minutes to do that, I hope. But we will make the announcements later. Yes, we'll also announce on Facebook and Discord and things like that. So you'll hear from us one way or another. Thanks again, everyone. Make sure you fill out the survey. It'll be closing around 9:30. We really want to hear from you guys. So on your phone, on a computer, whatever you got to do, We want to hear what you have to say. Thanks for coming.
All right, thank you, everybody, and good night.